Hey guys, welcome back to Blazed and Confused, and today we have another UFC video. There's been some stellar fights that have recently been announced, so let's jump straight into it. So the first fight that I want to talk about is Darren Till versus Derek Brunson. Now this is scheduled to take place August 14th, potentially in the London O2 Arena, which is, an incredible comeback for the UFC to the UK. Coming back to the capital of England, and bringing back a top prospect in Darren Till. Well, not prospect, should I say, but a good name in Darren Till. Derek Brunson's a very good fight for him. I've been calling for this fight ever since he announced his move up to middleweight. I think, even though Derek Brunson might not like to admit it, but I do think Derek Brunson is a bit of a gatekeeper in the middleweight division. I believe if you can get through Derek Brunson, I believe you're definitely a top 10 middleweight. If you look at his skill set, Derek Brunson's very well rounded. In all his fights, he always tests all his opponents. Edmund Shabazian fight, the Kevin Holland fight, the Ian Heinich fight. He always tests all his opponents in all aspects of MMA. So I believe if Darren Till can get through Derek Brunson, and I believe he's a legitimate, top 10, top 5 middleweight, and I definitely think that sets him up for a really good fight with Adesanya. Again, looking at the fight, stylistically, Darren Till's a very heavy striker. He's got a lot of power in that left hand, showing a good display of kicks. Muay Thai, he's very good in the clinch, sort of close quarter combat. So he's a very good fighter. We haven't really seen too much ground game from Darren Till. He has been taken down, but he doesn't really get taken down for too long. So what interests me about this fight is, if Derek Brunson is able to get Darren Till down, how long will he be able to do it? Because we've never, as I say, really seen Darren Till sort of in top mount being dominated, ground and pounded on the ground yet. So I think Derek Brunson is a legitimate test. It's a very tough fight for Darren, but I do believe Darren Till can definitely get it done. I think his power and his speed might be enough to sort of neutralize. Derek Brunson's grappling might kind of make him a bit stage fright, but I do think Darren Till should ultimately showcase his grappling. Now, I know he trains with Tom Aspinall, and Tom Aspinall's dad, I don't know his name, but Tom Aspinall's father is very high level jiu-jitsu. Tom Aspinall's also a black belt in jiu-jitsu, so he's got a good sort of training. He's got good training partners around him to elevate his jiu-jitsu game. So I definitely would like to see Darren Till's ground game on there. Will he be able to hang out with Derek Brunson on the ground, which will be interesting. I know Darren Till's got all the tools to knock Derek Brunson out. We've sort of seen Derek Brunson's chin has sort of come back up. He hasn't really taken too much damage in all his fights because he's been so dominating in the grappling. He's sort of done a very good job in his last few fights of sort of preserving that damage. We've seen what Adesanya did to him, Whitaker did to him. So it looked for a while that Derek Brunson was sort of going to go on a bit of a downside, but if you look at the win streak he's on right now, he's only beat killers, young up and coming killers that the UFC really wanted to push and promote. So Derek Brunson, I'd say, great contender, great matchup. Let me know your thoughts on this fight. A stellar main event for London potentially, so that is a sick fight. But the next fight that we need to talk about is Paulo Costa versus Jared Cannonier. This is another really exciting fight. I think it's a really good fight for Paulo Costa to return to. He hasn't really been in the octagon for too long, and at this point, he's probably pushing at least 8 or 9 months. So it's a good return fight for Paulo Costa, sort of prove that he still is a top 5 middleweight. I do believe he is. I think Paulo Costa is a very good fighter. I think if you look at all his fights leading up to the Adesanya fight, he's very high pace, high pressure, got a lot of volume and a lot of power in those punches. The Romero fight, he never really stopped coming forward, so his gas tank is there. I believe he's got all the tools to present a challenge to anyone in the top 5. I think the Whitaker fight would have been a good fight for him, but if you look at Jared Cannonier's skill set, Jared Cannonier also coming off a loss to Robert Whitaker, absolutely no shame into either dudes who they've lost to, just two champions in their weight class. So can't fault this style of fight. As I say, Jared Cannonier is very well rounded. He's shown some decent grappling, some good striking. So I think, as I say, stylistically this does favour the kind of fight Paulo Costa would want. I do believe it will be a stand-up fight. Maybe it is kind of suicide for Jared Cannonier to stand with Paulo Costa, but it'll be interesting just to sort of see how Paulo Costa's coming into this fight mentally. The Adesanya fight was kind of embarrassing for him, actually. If you look at all the trash talk leading up to that fight, Paulo Costa was really mouthing off Adesanya and really acting like he was going to destroy him, and then in the fight it was like watching Israel Adesanya versus Yoel Romero too. So As I said, I think mentally there's a lot of pressure coming into this fight, but I definitely still believe he's a top 5 middleweight. I think, as I say, he's a great fighter, but at the end of the day, we've seen with most of Adesanya's opponents, he's sort of minus Whitaker, everyone's sort of afraid to stand with Israel. No one really wants to take that risk and throw the first punch because they know Israel's going to ultimately counter and put their opponent away, as he sort of showcased against Paulo Costa, against Robert Whitaker. Even against Gastelum coming into the 5th round, he was tagging him quite a lot. Gastelum was getting sloppy. Well, I say this fight is going to be taking place August 21st. Hopefully this is going to be in Brazil. This needs to be a crowd fight for Paulo Costa's return. I think he needs that crowd. The support he's got in Brazil is pretty incredible. So, as I say, it's a great fight in the middleweight division. 2 bangers, back to back in the middleweight division in August. So I cannot wait for that month. But moving on to the next fight, we've got the return of Islam Makhachev versus Thiago Moises. Now, Islam Makhachev just coming off a very solid win over Drew Dober. Islam Makhachev is a very feared man in the lightweight division. Everyone's been turning down fights. He even said Paul Felder turned down a fight with him. Dan Hooker turned down a fight with him. Even RDA, who was originally meant to fight him last year, even turned down a fight with him. So you got a feel for the guy. In some aspect, he's a very high-level opponent. But I do think this is ultimately a bit of a mismatch because I really would love to see Makhachev in there with the top 10. I think he definitely is a top 10. I think to prove to everyone else that he's a top 10, he's a legitimate lightweight contender. I think he needs that push into the top 10. But as I say, for everyone to sort of take him a bit more seriously. But Thiago Moises is a very good fighter, coming off a win over Alexander Hernandez, who's very game, very hungry all the time. The way Alexander Hernandez approaches his fights. As I say, he's got a very good mindset. He's got a very good fight IQ. So it's a good opponent for Thiago Moises to sort of try and derail the hype train of Makhachev and potentially set himself up for a top 10 matchup. So I think a lot of credit should go to Thiago Moises for taking this fight. As I say, this could be a really big opportunity for Thiago Moises, and I think he really recognises that. It doesn't really do too much for Makhachev, unfortunately, but it extends his winning streak, and in this fight he will further prove that he is one of the best lightweights in the world. He's got all the support behind him. He's got Khabib, he's got Javier Mendez, so he's got a good training camp around him. He's got good people around him to elevate him into that championship material, and I do 100% believe Islam Makhachev could be a lightweight champion down the line. As I said, he just needs to sort of break in to the top 10 to really solidify that. But I say, great fight. That'll be taking place on July 17th, the fight night, the same card as Miesha Tate. So you got some great fights added to the July 17th card, but I don't believe there's a main event for that fight yet. But moving on to the next fight, we've got the return of Johnny Walker and Thiago Santos. This is a very good fight that's taking place September 25th. I think I really like this fight for Johnny Walker. As I say, it's a big opportunity. Thiago Santos, I believe, is still in the top 5 or at least top 6. So it's a good opponent for Johnny Walker to break into the top 10 in the light heavyweight division. I would say really get that name for himself, sort of build a name off Thiago Santos' position, then sort of elevate himself into the top 5 of getting those matchups with, Anthony Smith, with Alexander Rakic, and sort of being talked about as a future title contender. If you look at Johnny Walker's fights recently, he has been a bit sloppy. Even though he beat Ryan Spann and it was a very entertaining fight, he did sort of get rocked in that fight. He does have a bit of a weak chin, so I'd be interested to see if Thiago Santos will capitalise on that. But if you look at Thiago Santos, who's on a 3-fight losing streak, he's lost to absolutely incredible opponents. He's lost to John Jones, who's absolutely incredible, one of the greatest of all time. He's lost to Rakic, who's a solid contender in the lightweight division. He's lost to Teixeira, who's now a title contender and is a former champion in his own respect, a jiu-jitsu champion. So he's only lost to absolute killers. But I don't think he's the same ever since that leg injury, ever since he took that time off it. His footwork, his movement just doesn't really seem to be the same. But as I say, if he can sort of step up his game and take advantage of Johnny Walker's sort of weak chin and really make a statement on Johnny Walker, a young up-and-coming contender that the UFC was even pushing for a while to even potentially fight John Jones. So if he can sort of stop the tracks of Johnny Walker and, as I say, get everyone to remember that he is one of the best lightweights in there, then I think it could be a really good win. As I say, massive opportunity for Johnny Walker. Stylistically, this is the kind of fight Johnny Walker wants. A guy that will stand there with him and will trade shots. So I think it's a good fight for both guys. But moving on to the next piece of news, it's not a fight announcement, but we've got the return of Kevin Lee. Now I wanted to sort of include this in a video because Kevin Lee was calling out Mike Perry. Apparently Mike Perry turned it down, which is kind of understandable in his. At the end of the day, guys, at the end of the day, Kevin Lee, even though he's coming off a loss to Charles Oliveira, he was doing pretty well in that fight. Got to give it to him. I did have him winning the fight up until, unfortunately, he got a bit sloppy. I think he made a really bad decision. I think that takedown cost him the fight, whether that was his coach's move or his. But I think if he didn't shoot for that takedown, then I think he would have picked Charles Oliveira apart on the feet, and I think he would have won the fight. But I just think he, as I say, made one bad decision, which cost him a really big opportunity. If you look at the run that Oliveira went on, now he's potentially going to be a lightweight champion this weekend. But just looking at the opponents that he could come up against in Kevin Lee, I mean, you've got Santiago Ponzinibbio, who's coming off a big loss. You've got Lin Jing Lang, who's looking pretty good right now. You've got Robbie Lawler, if they want to sort of give him a name on his resume. You've got other names. You've got Neil Magny, you've got Jeff Neal, so you've got other opponents. I do think he deserves someone in the top 15, top 10, because if you even look at Kevin Lee's resume, he's only fought killers himself. So as I say, you got Oliveira's in there. You got the Acquaintance in there, who's a good contender at one point. You got the Ferguson. So he's only been up there with a real legitimate contender. Got a knockout over Gregor Gillespie. Was an absolutely beautiful head kick. If you look at the comeback that Gillespie just had recently, just sort of got that huge win over Ferreira. So he's a really solid contender at both weight classes. I think he can be a top 10 in either lightweight or welterweight. I think he's definitely got that star power. I think he's got that charisma. I just think he needs to sort of build himself back up and prove to everyone that he belongs in the UFC and that he's here to stay. But yeah, I look forward to the return of Kevin Lee. I hope he can come back with a bang, and hopefully the UFC gives him a pretty sweet matchup. I also know that he wants to return in summer, so whether he'll return on the McGregor card or go for that July 17th card, because there's some pretty big names on that card already. But my last piece of news for the video is the return of Luke Rockhold. Now this is quite funny. Luke Rockhold was calling out all these top 10 guys, and he was kind of annoyed. In an interview, he was saying that why wouldn't they want to fight Luke Rockhold? Like, why are they turning down this opportunity? Well, at the end of the day, Luke Rockhold's coming off a 2-fight losing streak. He got embarrassed against Jan Blachowicz. He didn't particularly look too good at light heavyweight. Just looked really bloated and really big. Didn't really look like he belonged in the weight class. But I'm excited for his return. See if he's still got it in him. I know he does a lot of work outside the UFC, doing modeling and all that stuff, and movies. So it'll be interesting to see again where he is mentally. Does he still have that championship drive? Does he still want to face the top 10 dudes? Because anyone in the top 10 for Luke Rockhold, that's a tough fight. You got the Hermansons and the Shabazians. Those guys are going to be fighting soon. As I say, you got the Darren Tills and the Darren Brunsons and the Paul Costas. You got some really scary contenders in there. As for who I'd like to see Luke Rockhold go against, I'd like to see him either fight, Kevin Holland, Kelvin Gastelum, kind of, either one of those names. I think those would be some really sweet fights. The Kevin Holland fight would be funny. I think he'd just take the piss out of Luke Rockhold the entire time leading up to the fight. So whoever the UFC match him up against, I'll look forward to it. As I say, hopefully he's still got it in him. But I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. I had to talk about the return of Darren Till. He's one of my favourite fighters, one of my favourite personalities. But as I say, hope you guys really enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts on all these fights. Which fight are you most excited about? Are there some fights I didn't mention that you guys are also excited about? I know they've also just announced Jeremy Stevens versus Gamrot Matsus, who's a good fighter that trains with Khamzat Chimaev. Khamzat Chimaev is also on about a UFC return. So I'd say some good fight announcements coming. As I say, please like, subscribe, and peace.